Zak Brown, you must be buoyed by McLaren's recent resurgence. Well, yeah, sure. It's the result of a comprehensive reassessment of the way that we do things here at the McLaren Technical Centre. Can you give me some examples of that, please? Sure, let me show you. Behind this door is what used to be one of our milling rooms. It's now, as you can hear, used for virtual simulation, which gives us great data. In this room, we have our newly recalibrated wind tunnel, which again gives us much more accurate data than we've had previously. And this is, we like this. This is Daniel Ricciardo's room. As you can hear, we've created a down-under environment, which really seems to have improved Daniel's confidence in the car, which of course shows in his most recent results. And next door, this room, that's Lando Norris's room, isn't it? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Hello, welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed. I'm Gareth, he's Tycho.
Hello.
And he's Zog.
Hello.
Zog, you're outnumbered by Joneses on this programme at the moment.
I know, it's a first. Good to see you, Tycho.
Yeah, it's good to be on the show because normally I can hear what you guys are talking about and I catch up afterwards. But yesterday I was invited to come on a show whilst we were watching the race and I said yes. So
yeah, well, it made perfect sense because...
So welcome.
Whilst you were watching the race live in your home, Zog, Tycho and I watched it together live here. And, Tycho, you're a big Lando Norris fan, so you must be really feeling for poor Lando today.
Yeah, I mean, it was defo tough for Lando at this race. And yeah, I would say, for me as well, Formula One this year has been very exciting because I took a few years off Formula One. So yeah, being able to watch the races with you and get back into it, especially with someone like Lando, who's basically the same age as me, and seeing him do really well is really exciting. Seeing McLaren do well is really exciting. But obviously, yeah, it wasn't the best result for the boy. But you know what? I feel like everyone, everyone loves him in the paddock and they give him a little bit of an extra allowance, I feel like, and they give him a bit extra comfort than some of the drivers. But he's a top driver. He's one of the best. So,
well, absolutely. I mean, to lead that entire race bar 4 or 6 laps, something like that, he should have won, really, Zog, shouldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he did everything that he needed to do, apart from go the right way on a very, very tricky decision at the end. And, it's hard to say it was the wrong decision. Given the information he had, it was still a borderline decision. Mercedes, they had the weather call absolutely right. They said the rain was going to get worse. McLaren thought the rain wasn't going to get worse. That's what they told Lando. And, when you've only got 4 laps left, even if the intermediates are quicker, they've got to be, more than 6 seconds a lap quicker in order for it to be worth putting them on. And, he was doing an incredible job of staying ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who is a master in the wet.
Yeah,
you know what I think? When it comes to, I feel like Mercedes, I think I said this to you yesterday, I feel like Mercedes, they almost knew how the race was going to turn out in terms of the weather. It felt like they had a little idea of the strategy the whole time because I remember early on in the race and they said to Bottas, oh, look, you could be fighting for like 5th place. And they were like to Lewis, you can be fighting to win this. And yeah, I feel like they just had that bit of extra confidence when it came to the final decision. Whereas, yeah, Lando, we were kind of all with him when he was staying out because it's kind of better to stay out and kind of lose the position rather than just throw it away by pitting if the people behind him didn't pit and then the rain wasn't that bad and then, he would have just thrown it away. But I
think Tycho's nailed it. It was a gambling situation, wasn't it? It was like, do we hope against hope or do we make a safe decision with the view of it playing out right? Because I'm not sure. I agree with Tycho that Mercedes knew how the weather was going to play out.
I feel like they just had a general idea that, a little bit more confidence than McLaren. Not necessarily confidence, but it's just like, I feel like, yeah, they just knew if things go right, they can just nick it at the end.
Well, I mean, they didn't have a crystal ball, but and I'm sure they weren't the only team that were in this position, they knew that rain could come in at the end of the race, and they knew it would be an opportunity for them. But then to make the call, if you put your driver on the intermediates too early, you run the risk of burning the tyres out.
Yeah.
And if you put them on the intermediates too late, which is what McLaren did with Norris, then you have a horribly slow lap while you're on your way to the pits to put the inters on. You're losing a lot of time there. You don't get as much benefit as you want out of them, and you end up, as in this case, ended up back. Was he 7th or 8th in the end?
I thought he finished 6th, and he got away with a
reprimand. Alonso was 6th.
Alonso was 6th. He must have been 7th.
He
then.
overtook Kimi on the last lap. Just to get 7th, wasn't it?
Lando was driver of the day for sure. You could see how disappointed he was. But we know he's a potential future champion. We know he's an incredible driver. And I thought he showed a lot of character in the interviews after the race.
I thought he seemed very chill as well before the race. I was kind of surprised. I thought he was going to be a lot more kind of like, oh, this is my big shot. Like, this is make or break. But, he did an interview about 15 minutes before the race
on the grid.
Yeah, and he seemed pretty chill. He wasn't there kind of like, oh, I've just got to do this. He was kind of like, yeah, we just got to run. It's going to be good. We've got a shot.
Yeah, he's very balanced and mature.
Before the race, I kind of was like, oh, it's kind of his race to lose. So I was very impressed, apart from the rain, that he probably would have won it.
Sure, yeah. And I think Hamilton himself said that if the race had stayed dry, he didn't think he'd have been able to take him before the end.
Yep.
It would have been the second McLaren win in a row.
I know. McLaren are definitely resurgent, aren't they? You can almost say they're there already, because Lando was essentially on pole on merit because they didn't mess up during qualifying in the way that Mercedes messed up in qualifying. Well, it was Lewis who messed up, of course, who dented his front wing, delaying his ability to get out and do 2 laps on the right tyres, and therefore complete. So, yeah, McLaren are arguably already doing a better job than Mercedes. That's a shock, isn't it?
Well, are they doing a better job? I mean, they've had a couple of breaks. They've had a bit of a fair wind behind them, perhaps. But it's not as if they've got outrageously lucky. I mean, yeah, they've got the results through taking full advantage of the opportunities that were there for them. And yeah, they've got a much quicker car. The team is really gelling. They've got 2 drivers who are able to get the best out of the car now, whereas before, it's only in the last couple of races that Ricciardo has really come good in the team.
Yep.
And that's tremendous to see, because, I think we anticipated that this would be a great driver pairing in terms of personality and in terms of which 2 drivers would you most want to go out for a drink with, or would you want to hang out with and just enjoy their company. It's got to be those 2. But it's been disappointing that Ricciardo wasn't able to. He's obviously been so frustrated in the early part of the season in not being able to get more speed out of the car and not understanding maybe why he wasn't able to get more out of it, but come together for them. And it's really contributing to, I mean, I think you were saying, Tycho, you've been enjoying this season so much, and we are having a tremendous season. We're in the middle of this wonderful battle between quite probably the greatest Formula One driver ever, who is, approaching the end of his career, and a stellar rising talent in Verstappen. The fight between those 2 is wonderful. They're so evenly matched. They've both got terrific first-class teams behind them. But it's not just that battle. I mean, the race that we've just had, it was all about another young driver in a best-of-the-rest team. And in Monza, it was, again, it was all about the McLaren resurgence, their first win for years, their first 1-2 for years. Yeah, so what a season.
You know what? We've spoken about Hamilton, and we've spoken about Verstappen, and we've spoken about Norris. But you know what? In that race, I would say Sainz did a tremendous job. And we're kind of sleeping on Ferrari a little bit. I don't think they've got the pace, but he came 3rd. Yeah, third. He did a top job the whole weekend, I would say, to get that result for Ferrari.
Absolutely, and he took the lead at the start. Norris was able to pass him before long, but Ferrari, again, they've had their problems recently, but Leclerc has been terrific this year.
They've got great drivers. Very likeable and great drivers. And I would say, though, that they don't necessarily have the pace, but they've got a good, very experienced team. And yeah, they're building their way back up, I would say.
Yeah, they're not making mistakes, are they, at the moment? Ferrari occasionally go through a period where they make some dreadful sort of trackside blunders, don't they? And we haven't seen that for a while. So they're under good shape under Matteo Binotto. And I'm happy to see that. But I've got to flag up something else which happened in the later stages of the race, which made me tear my hair out with despair. And that is Vettel attempting to get past Stroll and the two of them colliding. I mean, no, come on, that's the worst thing in the world. And Vettel, again, I don't know if it's right to blame Vettel. Stroll had no idea that he was there. But why? Why didn't Stroll have any idea he was there? Why did Vettel put him in that situation? Yeah.
The team really should have been on the radio to both of them, making them aware. Yeah, they really should have known where the other guy was. I'm not sure that it was particularly either of the drivers' fault there, like you say. It was just a lack of awareness, lack of situational awareness. But yeah, this was one of the weekends where Aston Martin surely wanted a particularly good result. They wanted to have a particularly good showing with release of the new Bond film coming up, so they're doing all of their sticking Vettel in a DB5 to do some hooning around the track and get all that stuff on TV, which we want to see. And yeah, you don't want to have your two drivers clattering into each other and then both finishing out of the points at a circuit where you might expect to be going reasonably well. Yeah, very disappointing. Particularly as, actually, Stroll had a pretty decent first part of the race. Stroll has his ups and downs, but this was one of the races where he had a good first part of the race.
Do we say exactly the same here? I've been ragging on Stroll for a while now, but Tycho turned to me yesterday and said, actually, he's not bad, really, Stroll. I mean, he really is a much better driver now than he was a couple of years ago, and he can hold his own against Vettel, to be fair.
We love to hate on him. Love to hate on him.
You've got to have someone to hate.
Yeah, you've got to have someone, but...
And the only reason we hate him is that his dad owns the team, really. Yeah. It's not fair, is it? It's like having you on this programme, isn't it?
Yeah. I think maybe like the synergy between Vettel and Stroll just ain't perfect. You know, with the dad owning the team and Vettel having a bit of kind of pressure from, you know, having all this experience. And, you know, it's just who's the top dog in the team. I don't think they're really super gelling like, you know, you put Norris and Ricciardo or Norris and Sainz, you can tell there's a friendly, healthy energy there.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how that's going to work between Stroll, who's like some young kind of rich boy, and then Vettel, who's experienced. You know, do you know what I mean? It's just two different vibes. I can't imagine what it's like.
Vettel doesn't have anything to prove.
Right.
He's won the championships. He's got all the experience. I've got to say, I like the way that Vettel is approaching things at the moment. He's got a nice, very measured kind of approach to things. He doesn't let much rattle him. He doesn't get too heated about things and blow things out of proportion. He's taking everything in his stride. He's delivering good performances, and I'm sure giving a lot back to the team in terms of the kind of feedback that only an experienced driver can really give you.
He's always been quite technical, Vettel. I mean, if you work with Adrian Newey, you've got to be technical. You've got to understand his often complex cars. So he will have a good database of being able to develop complicated cars, or certainly develop cars. And that's got to be valuable to Aston Martin, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. One other thing I wanted to ask both of you guys was, what did you guys think of Paul di Resta on the commentary, because Martin Brundle wasn't there yesterday?
As far as commentary goes, I thought Paul di Resta was absolutely fine. He's no Martin Brundle, who is an exceptional racer turned commentator.
Agreed.
My problem with the Sky commentary, I mean, you know, Paul di Resta is always going to look pretty good from my point of view on the commentary, because I really don't like David Croft's commentary all that much, I'm afraid.
Oh, you're a Crofty hater.
I am a little bit, yeah. Too many little things he does in commentary that really wind me up. It seems like he commentates a little bit too much like he's commentating for a classroom full of 7-year-olds. And also, he always gets numbers wrong. When he's rounding numbers, he always cuts off the later numbers. In terms of handling decimal places,
he rounds down rather than up.
He never correctly rounds up a number. So if somebody's done a 123.999,
yeah, he'll call it a 123, and it's actually a 124.
Yeah, he'd call it a 123 rather than a 124.
Yeah, I can see why that would annoy you, Zoggy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't pick up on that personally. I'm not a numbers guy.
I would.
Your brother Indy would.
But the thing that Tycho and I were laughing about is the consistent way in which Paul di Resta pronounces the word Mercedes. It's full Sean Connery. It's not Mercedes to him, it's Mercedes.
Mercedes.
Beautiful. But my biggest bugbear at the moment in terms of pronunciation in Formula One is that no one says Perez's name correctly. His name is not Sergio, it's Sergio. It's not Sergio, it's Sergio Perez. Actually, I'm going to write to Crofty and I'm going to write to Ted and I'm going to tell him this. It's about time we got that right, isn't it?
And they say Perez, and I believe it's Perez.
Perez, yeah. Sergio Perez.
I've got to admit, I did not know it was Sergio, but I'm going to try and get that right.
You might pronounce the G like an H, like Sergio.
Sergio, soften it.
Soften
but
it.
When I looked into it to Spanish pronunciation of the name Sergio, it pronounced the G hard. So, hey, I could be wrong, but I'm not sure I am.
Perhaps a native speaker can put us right on this.
Please do.
Let us know what the correct pronunciation is.
So, yeah, if you are listening to this programme and you were born and bred speaking Spanish, please tell us whether it is Sergio or Sergio or Sergio or Sergio. I'm pretty sure it's Sergio, but I'd like to hear it from someone who knows defo. Okay, a couple of things before we wrap this up on the subject of Formula One. Tycho said something absolutely cracking about Mick Schumacher. When I spotted that Mick Schumacher was wearing his father's helmet for this race, his father's original white helmet with the yellow, red and black on it, not this more contemporary version of his father's helmet, but his dad's original helmet. Yeah. Tycho, how did you describe Mick Schumacher?
Well, I said at this point, Mick Schumacher is a little bit like a Michael Schumacher tribute act. Because, I feel like everyone's living their love of Michael Schumacher through him.
Yeah.
And, he looks very similar. And the name is like a little bit of a spin-off. So, at this point, he's a bit of a Michael Schumacher tribute act. We'll see if he follows in his footsteps of his father. Big shoes to fill. And, also what kind of led me to say that was as well, he's in Haas right now. And I think for him, the car will be very important to his career's success, of course. And so, we'll just have to see if we can get in a good car. And there's a lot of great drivers out there. And he will get a good amount of time and support in F1 through his father's name. And he is a super talented driver, of course.
He won F2.
He won F2, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we got to see how that kind of turns out. Will he go to Ferrari once maybe Leclerc or Sainz maybe heads back to McLaren? Who knows? You never know.
That's a good point, actually. What are the conditions that would allow Mick to go to Ferrari? And the only possibility I can see is that Leclerc or Sainz are poached from Ferrari. They're not going to let either of those two go, are they?
Well, Mick needs to prove himself a bit more. He's certainly looking competent in that Haas.
It's an awful car.
Yeah, he needs some better machinery to show what he can do, and he needs a bit more experience. He's clearly not the prodigious talent that his father was, but who is?
Yeah.
Like you said, they're big shoes to step into. They're very high expectations to measure up to, and it's kind of unfair to measure him by those standards. Yeah, he's making a solid start, but let's see how he goes next year and how he's looking at the end of this season. And let's hope he gets a chance in a better machine. Yeah, simple as that.
One final thing before we move on, and that's again something that Tycho noted during the coverage, and that is finally how smiley and relaxed Lewis was at the end of this race, which is probably the first time in I don't know how many races we've seen him that relaxed.
He seemed very happy in the post-race interviews. And I think, for him, it was probably a big weight of his chest to be able to get that 100th victory, because the last victory he had was the British Grand Prix. And for Mercedes, I feel like they've managed to keep their composure over the last few races, and they've gotten a bit unlucky. And I feel like this one kind of reassured them they're back on winning form. And they didn't even really seem to care too much. He was very congratulative of Verstappen.
Lando. Verstappen, yeah.
I feel like the Lando one was necessary because otherwise he seems like a bit of a dick. If he isn't giving props where it's due. Yeah. But with Verstappen, where he doesn't really owe anything, he still after the race was saying, how did he do that? Amazing. He must have done an amazing job, which isn't very much like Lewis, because obviously, he wants to win more than anything.
There's needle there, isn't there? Yeah, interesting. Hey, right, listen, Tycho, thank you very much for joining us. How fantastic to have you on the programme. We'll say goodbye to Tycho now.
Cheers, Tycho.
But Zog, you stick around, and after this short break, we'll return with Alex Goy to talk about road cars. Romain Grosjean, you've had a sensational first season in IndyCar. Congratulations, son. Thank you. Clearly, you've adapted well to IndyCar. Now, all you need is a catchphrase. You know, the kind of thing we have here in U.S. Autosport. Yes, I know. Chip Ganassi has I like winners. Alex Palou has send it. And so, have you come up with a catchphrase for yourself? Yes, I have. It is c'est cuire et cuire. And what does that translate to in American? Shake and bake. I'm pretty sure that one's already taken. Okay, how about l'homme magique? The what now? The Magic Man. I'm darn sure that's in the same movie. Okay, how about Je suis en feu? What does that mean? I'm on fire? Romain, have you seen the ballad of Ricky Bobby? Who is Ricky Bobby? Dear Lord, baby Jesus.
Gareth Jones on speed!
Joining us right now on Gareth Jones on Speed from his, as he will explain, slightly noisy home in South London. Alex, you've got a sound issue today, haven't you?
Hi, I have. The sound issue, well, one, my laptop fan's going overdrive because I was exporting pictures earlier and it hasn't quite recovered. But the other issue is I live opposite a petrol station. And if you've been anywhere near social media or the news or basically spoken to anybody, all you'll hear is, oh, have you heard about the petrol? The petrol's running out. So, obviously living opposite said petrol station, on Friday, I left the house about midday to go and visit a friend, and the forecourt was full. There wasn't a queue, the forecourt was full. And then I got a lift back home with a friend of mine, and every petrol station we passed on Friday night had a massive queue outside of it because everyone was worrying.
Yep.
And by the time I got to the one opposite me, all the pumps were shut. They were all dead. Anyway, this morning, well, last night even, I got back from Worcestershire, which I'll explain a bit later. There was a queue down the road. And I was like, oh, good Lord. And it hasn't stopped. The road I live on, I won't name the road I live on because people might be able to find where I live. But it's kind of a main trunk road out of London. You kind of start here, and if you keep going, you'll end up on the M4. And it means that road is blocked, basically, by people trying to get to the petrol station from either side of the road.
Okay, let's have 15 seconds of absolute silence just to see if we can hear the sound of people fighting or horns blowing or engines ticking over.
You'll probably get my laptop fan more than that, I'm afraid.
Okay, give it 10 seconds. Here we go.
Hang on.
Didn't hear anyone getting stabbed.
There was a little horn. There was a tiny horn.
We've got to go with a little period of calm.
Okay, let's talk quickly
There's
before
some revvy engines.
before it all kicks off.
Basically, it's been a day of low-level engine noise and occasional buses not getting past, going, just noise. More noise than normal. It's been excruciating. Now, I have a small problem in that I have on my drive at the moment, so I can't talk about it because I haven't driven it yet, but I have a Renault Clio V6 to film.
Ooh.
Now, this car requires two things. Fuel,
Yes.
in quite vast quantities,
I'll bet.
and dry days. And tomorrow, when I'm filming it, it's not going to be dry, and I need petrol, because I'm filming it in the New Forest, which is 1,000 miles away from here.
Crikey. Oh, good luck with that.
And have you got any fuel in either of your two cars, which are parked downstairs at the moment? Are you able to siphon it out?
The practical car, the Aston, that's full. I filled that up on the way home from a shoot on Thursday and haven't touched it since.
Panic buyer.
The what, sorry?
Panic buyer.
Panic buy. Well, no, I was on half a tank because I was filming for 2 days. It's incredibly banal, very sorry. I was filming for 2 days up in Reading and I was on like just under half a tank and I thought, sod it, I can do that. It's like 40 miles. So I got there, think, I could fill up on the way home, can't be bothered. Drove home and then I was on about a quarter of a tank and I was like, I can definitely get there, that's easy, but I should probably get some petrol. And I hadn't realised why it had been so hard to find it. Because there was a BP station and an Esso station near where we were filming. And the Esso one was on the way home and I pulled in and they were empty. And I was like, this is weird. And then there was another one that was empty and I finally brimmed it and it was fine. And then, the next morning, the world was running out of petrol. It's very silly.
Yeah, there hasn't been much keep calm and carrying on, has there?
No, but we should have learnt this from all the toilet paper and the pasta.
Yeah.
You should never try and run your car on toilet paper or pasta. I've discovered
No,
that.
bad idea.
Doesn't work. Now, you've been driving, haven't you, with a bunch of well-dressed men or something? What is this? Explain what this is. I got some garbled message that I didn't quite follow. What is it you've been doing?
Darling, I always drive with well-dressed men. Some of you may be familiar with the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. It's a motorcycle rally. It runs on a day every year, but it happens all over the world, not simultaneously, but on the same day. So it starts in Australia, and then it kind of cascades around the planet. The idea is you dress up in your sort of Goodwood Revival finery, so you look all a bit posh and a bit spiffy. Dapper is the phrase they use. You look a bit...
A lot of
dapper.
tweed.
Yeah, but a lot of tweed goes on, three-piece suits, that kind of thing. Goggles and open-face helmets and all stuff like that. And you get people to sponsor you to raise money for Movember. That's the idea. Now, I've never been able to take part in it, obviously, because while I can ride a motorbike, I choose not to, because my right knee aches when it's cold, because of one. And this year, they brought out the Distinguished Gentleman's Drive. It's a motorcycle thing first, Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, the DGR they call it, and it's been going for thick end of a decade, maybe over a decade now.
Okay, I've missed this entire thing somehow.
Well, no, if you're not into motorbikes, then it probably wouldn't have gotten you. And then if you're not into kind of cafe racery, triumphy, kind of artisan-y motorbikes, then it definitely would have passed you by. So it's unless you live in a very specific bit of London and you're there on that day and you see like 50, 60, 70 people all dressed a bit Goodwood Revival-y riding past you, it's no surprise you wouldn't have known what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're doing a drive, which is great. So yesterday now, so was it the 26th, September the 26th, started off in Australia, and lots of well-dressed men got in cars, well-dressed men and women, but the focus is mostly men because it raises money to support Movember. There are a few in the UK. I did the one from Malvern, from the Morgan factory, because my mate Rich from Motorpunk organised it, and also my car was there because it spent some time up there. And it was a really, really lovely day. The idea is it's pre-80s cars, unless you've got something Morganish or continuation-ish. So someone turned up in an XKSS that Jag remade, no one would tell you off.
Right.
That kind of thing. So if it looks the part, you're allowed. We had some trouble because of the fuel thing, because the older cars tend to be a little bit thirsty. So some people were like, I can't do it, just can't get there. So we had a decent turnout. We had a smattering of 911s and 912, an old drop-top Merc SL 280 automatic. There was a Skoda Estelle.
Oh, nice.
Just snuck that one in there. An old 3 Series, an MGB. There was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of very cool stuff, and I can't quite remember it all. And of course, me and my three-wheeler, because they let me join in. And it was, it was a really lovely kind of community day, because it was people celebrating what they have and raising a bit of money. I think our little drive raised about $3,000.
Wow.
Which, considering how many people were there, and it's the first year, so people don't really know what it is or what it's all about. And globally, it's raised Lord knows how much. But they were all over the UK. It was a really lovely day. There will be eventually a film on Carfection about it that I had nothing to do with until I was told you have something to do with it. So I'm definitely in it. In front of the camera, tarting around in a purple Morgan wearing tweed and a bow tie. Now, a moment of personal pride here. I don't wear bow ties, ever. I used to have to wear them once a year for an awards do, and I used to have to teach myself in a hotel mirror with a YouTube video.
Yeah.
After 4 or 5 years without doing it, took me 2 tries. I
Very
can do it from
good.
memory now.
Well,
yes.
as Matt Smith would say, bow ties are cool.
Bow ties are cool.
The whole event looked like it was going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad to hear it went well. And also, well done to all of you for raising a bit of money for charity. On which note, I did come across a little snippet recently about charity fundraiser events.
Yeah.
And we should just give credit to this event for actually raising some money for charity.
Yep.
Because it turns out that parachute jumps for charity to raise money for the NHS are not actually a very cost-effective way of raising money for the NHS.
Why? How?
Turns out that when you crunch the numbers, the cost to the NHS in injuries from charity parachute jumps considerably exceeds the amount of money that is raised by charity jumps for the NHS.
Fantastic.
Because, as you can imagine, a lot of the people who do charity parachute jumps are first-time parachute jumpers who are more likely to have accidents. And I think also a parachute jump is probably a relatively expensive thing to do in the first place. It's not like a sponsored walk, which doesn't cost anybody anything.
Yeah.
So yes, if you're going to do a charity thing, make sure it's going to work out for whoever you're raising the money for.
My lovely mob, we managed to get just under 300 quid. All of that goes straight to the Distinguished Gentleman's Drive. I've not seen any of it, but it seems to have raised lots of money, and the whole movement is really cool. I'm always big on anything to do with men's mental health, so I'm just happy it exists and I can help.
Backtracking for a moment, I just want to go back to some of the cars that you talked about.
Yeah.
In that fleet. Two that got my attention were the Porsche 912.
Yeah.
And the Skoda Estelle. I am so chuffed that the Estelle is now considered a kind of a cool retro car, because it was one of the last, curiously, along with the Porsche 911, the last of the rear engine cars that you could buy in that period.
Yeah.
So did you have a Rapide a long time ago, if I remember? A Rapid, rather?
No, a friend did, and we did a couple of road trips in it, and it was fantastic.
Robust.
Kind of basic, but robust. It struggled up some very difficult, quite slippery, icy mountain roads when much more modern and superficially off-road capable vehicles were struggling.
Nicely put.
That absolutely sold me on Skodas. I'm a big fan. So yeah, I'm glad to hear there was an Estelle on that little ride.
And the other car type that you mentioned, Alex, in your list there, were continuation cars, which I choose as a deliberate link towards the cars that I want you to tell me about right now.
Ah, right, yes. Well, yes, the continuation thing, if it looked like it belonged on the drive, it could have done. But what you're talking about is what I spent 2 lovely days doing last week. So being the very lucky jammy sod that I am, I was doing a couple of films for Carfection on a company called GTO Engineering, but not specifically on the company, but some of the cars that they kind of create. So GTO Engineering's jam is maintaining, restoring, rebuilding Ferraris.
Right.
Classic modern, they can hack it.
At $1 billion for the price of Modena themselves, I would imagine. Yeah.
You know what? I didn't ask because I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared to know.
If you need to ask, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
I walked into their workshop and there was 250s here, there was I think it was a 612 or a 575 on ramps, and you know, it's all there, right? But what GTO Engineering does is it builds revival cars.
Which are what?
A GTO Engineering revival, essentially, it uses a Ferrari chassis from a car that has been so knackered over its life, fire theft or damage, whatever, that it's not really worth restoring it or kind of trying to conquer it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So they take this chassis, but because getting hold of bits for old Ferraris is difficult, GTO's other side hustle, other thing, is recreating and building bits. So they can build you a Ferrari V12 to the exact original spec, but with modern tech.
And they're allowed to do this? Ferrari allow them to do this, do they? That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So because it's classic stuff, they know how to. It's building bits and sticking it together. That's, you know, it's all good. I didn't ask them too much about the legality of it, but so far, you know, I asked ages ago. He's like, well, you know, we haven't had a phone call yet, so we're all right.
Yeah.
So what they do is they take these kind of knackered Ferrari chassis and build them into revival cars. Now, currently they build 3 revival cars. They do a 250 Testarossa.
Oh, hello.
Legendary racer. 250 short wheelbase, which is just, yeah. And the most recent one, which was revealed at Goodwood Revival, is the California Spider.
Oh.
As in the Ferrari California, the Ferris Bueller car, 106 made in long and short wheelbase. But essentially what they are is it's just magic. You get in it and everything looks like it's from Modena in the 50s and 60s. You know, the dials are correct, the seating layout's correct, because it's all built to this original plan. It's a faithful recreation of what was once there. And it's on an older Ferrari chassis, so the reg is all old school, so it still counts.
And arguably better built than the originals, perhaps?
Well, when you think about... So the parts are recreations. They're built as the original ones would have looked, but they're built to modern tolerances.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you've got modern equipment, modern CAD tools and modern milling and engineering equipment, and you've also got the in-house expertise of GTO Engineering, you can build these things to a very, very high standard, which in some cases, could be better than the original. The tolerances that you're going to be making things to, I mean, if they're making a new, in inverted commas, Ferrari engine, you know, however many original bits are in it, if you want to, you can do a better job than the original.
Yeah, what they do is absolutely magic. The cars, they look beautiful. Like, the bodies are kind of hand-rolled aluminium or I think it's aluminium, hand rolled on English wheels and things like that to make everything all special and beautiful and wonderful. So it looks bob on. Like, you look at their 250 short wheelbase and you go, that is a 250 short wheelbase. I mean, it isn't, but it is. And then you look at the California Spider and it's like, well, that's bang on. That's what that is. That's the Ferris Bueller car. And it's genuinely brilliant, but there is no concession to modernity. So you can't have CarPlay in it. You can have air conditioning in the 250 short wheelbase, which I would advise you get because it's just a glass house. I was 22 degrees when I was driving it and I was just dissolving. It was globs of sweat and disgustingness of falling off me. You can have a USB charge port put in so you can charge your phone as you go, but you can't attach it. Well, bear in mind, I did the Mille Miglia in a C-Type and that had a USB port fitted to it so you could charge your phone as you went. So it's what's possible with the technology that's there. A sympathetic modification. But, you know, there's no easy gearbox, there's no easy this, there's no easy that. Like, it's
the real deal, as much as it can be, yeah.
It is the real deal in, like, every conceivable way. It's the most bizarre thing, because you step back in time, and I'm driving this car. Why am I driving? I don't understand.
You know, when they do, what do they call it? Experimental archaeology, where historians build a siege machine of the type that would have been used 400 years ago, and they tend to build it using tools that were available in that day to see how it would have worked and what was achievable using the materials that they had. In some ways, these vehicles are a bit like that, except they're using modern machine tools to make them happen. And it is a form of experimental automotive archaeology, you could say, because these are essentially, they're starting from a VIN number. That's all they're really saving from these cars, isn't it? The only bit of the chassis that could be reprinted, the VIN number.
Well, no, they're starting with 250 chassis, aren't they?
There are donor cars. Underneath the 250 Spider I drove was a 250 GTE that had a life.
Oh, okay.
Last year I drove a 250 short wheelbase. It was a 330, I think, underneath there. So it's all cars of the right era, but just turned into something a little different.
Yeah.
They're not trashing a California Spider to make another California Spider because there aren't as many of those, but there were cases where I think Ferrari just built lots. So if a few fall by the wayside, the world won't end.
They're trashing a run-of-the-mill regular 250, not one of those rare 36
a
only
run-of-the-mill
built
regular 250.
Yeah.
Oh, a universe where any 250 could be described as regular or run-of-the-mill means that we've got warped sensibilities, doesn't it?
Nice problem to have.
I'll tell you what, they've got this hand-built to modern tolerances V12 under the hood. You can have it 3.5 or 4 litres. Both of the cars I drove had a 3.5 litre with 320 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 5-6-ish seconds, 150 top speed. You don't need more power than that. And you don't need to go faster than that when a car like that has presence.
Yeah.
I now get why Golf Rs are tuned to 1,000 horsepower and go really quickly, because it's just this sort of amorphous blob driving down the road. But when you're in a GTO Engineering revival car or a legit Ferrari 250, you're making big V12 noise, you look like that. Yeah, you can put your foot down, it'll bound up the road, but it won't break the sound barrier, because what's the point? Especially with the Spider, because the Spider is designed to be seen. You need to be there. You're part of the experience.
Exactly. You want people to get a good look at you as you waft on by.
It's an automotive design statement rather than just a car, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's some of the high points. It's a high point of 20th century car culture that petrol heads want to revisit and have a taste of. And if you're lucky enough to be able to experience it as a reviewer or as a wealthy individual who actually gets to buy one, then you're a lucky bunny.
Yeah.
That's my next question, Zog, or rather Alex. How wealthy a car enthusiast do you need to be to buy these? Do you know what these things cost?
I do. So it's not going to be your only car. Probably won't be even your 10th car. So these retail between £750,000 and £850,000, depending on your spec, depending on what you want to do with it. And then after that, you've got all taxes and all things like that. So they aren't cheap. It was a very expensive week. I'm very glad I didn't put any of them into a hedge.
Bet.
But the thing is, like, you get in it and it's like driving a beautifully put together classic car.
Yeah.
So you can have the California Spider, you can have the legit Spider on a plinth in your garage. But to actually use that thing is ridiculous, because the moment you put a mile on it, you've lost value. If someone crunches it, you're knackered. If anything happens to it, it's such a fragile, rarefied thing. Whereas you can ring up GTO Engineering and go, can I have something that looks like the car I have for less than a tenth of the price? And they'll go, yeah.
Exactly, a tenth of the price. Didn't the Daytona 250 sell for 7 million recently?
So I can find... Hang on, let me do a quick internet. Because I remember California Spider price. So a California Spider recently went for... So 250 GT short wheelbase... Oh no, sorry, I'm just reading the Googles. James Coburn's Ferrari 250 GT California Spider is up for auction. And that went for... teen millions, I believe.
Teen millions, okay.
Teen millions.
I wonder how much the James Coburn Provenance, does that bump it up much? It's probably not quite the same as the Paul Newman owned Rolex Daytona.
Yeah.
But, any vintage Rolex Daytona is going to be expensive, but the Paul Newman one is going to be astronomical.
And do GTO Engineering only do Ferrari GTOs? For instance, if I turned up there and said, I want a Mitsubishi 3000 GTO,
Sadly not.
Oh, what a shame.
Mark Lyon, the chap that runs the company, is a really lovely bloke. He always worked on Ferraris. He built them. That was his business from being a youth. And he separated off from his former employer and did bits, like specific bits of Ferraris. And then as his business grew, he started doing whole Ferraris. And now it's this massive thing. So he's only Ferraris. You can't rock up with a Mitsubishi GTO and be like, yeah, can you do that? It's like 197 horsepower front wheel drive. Japanese. No, sorry. We don't have the tooling.
There's probably some specialist in Japan who do exactly what you want there, Gareth.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, like, what's happening now is there's going to be a kind of recreation or resto mod or revival market for everything.
Yeah.
It just depends on how old you are now and how old the car you love is. So say you look at the guys at David Brown, they'll do you the Speedback GT, which is an XKR convertible made to look kind of like a DB5-ish.
Yeah, as if you've got bad vision, perhaps.
Yeah. And then they'll do you the Mini, which is
great.
It's the car that David Brown and his mates used to razz around in way back when.
Yeah.
But now, it's comfortable and it's got aircon and it's got CarPlay, so you can have the Mini that won't break down and you'll have all the fun in the world with it. And so you've got the Mini guys, and then you've got obviously Porsche, huge resto mod scene there. Singer is obviously the big one.
Yeah.
But you have, I've driven a few myself.
There are people who do Lancias as well now, of course.
Yep. Lancia boys, it's all going to happen depending on who you are and what you want.
There's that Volvo P1800S Cyan. That would be the one I'd go for, to be honest.
I would love that.
I think we've just answered the question I was going to ask us all three to answer before we wrap this programme up, is that if you could have a resto mod, what would it be? Zog, it would be your P1800, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be that P1800 Cyan. That said, I'm not sure I'd turn my nose up at the GTO Engineering SWB.
You won't. The engine noise is simply incredible. They're beautiful to look at, they're beautiful to drive, they're beautiful just to be around. Everything is stitch-inch perfect. It's just glorious. However, my resto mod of choice, and it's quite cheating, but it's the Aston Martin DB5 Goldfinger continuation car, because mine comes with a smoke screen.
Yes, and it also comes with machine guns with the authentic sound that they sampled from the movie, as I understand, of a Browning.
Yep.
Yeah, I wrote an article about it for DAF magazine. I know you've driven the car as well,
I
Alex.
drove it. It was great. Well, if you want a really cool thing, when's this going out, Gareth? What's the date it's going out?
The Thursday, which is what, the 30th? Yeah.
That's the 30th this Thursday. So you will have missed by one day, Aston Martin did a thing where they put a giant Corgi DB5 down by Battersea Power Station, and the car in the box
saw the pictures,
is the continuation DB5, and it's the prototype. It's the only road legal.
And
now it's gone. I can tell you how much it's worth.
Which is?
3 and a bit million quid.
Yes.
3 million quid in a box by the river.
Yes. Yes, the most expensive new car ever or something like that. There was some deal about it, because if you bought a Zagato Aston Martin, wasn't it? They threw another car in.
That was the twin, so it was the DB4 Zagato.
That was
and
it.
Something else, you would get one.
Yeah.
The most expensive production new car, because the DB5 is technically a continuation, is the Rimac Nevera.
Which you've driven, you big
Because
show
I've
off.
driven, because I'm that kind of guy. What? Modest as well, obviously.
That's it. You've been listening to the modest Alex Goy.
Bye.
To the dreaming of owning a Volvo P1800 Cyan Zog.
Goodbye.
Earlier on in the show was my glorious son, Tycho, and I was Gareth. See you for the next On Speed here in 2 weeks in your ears. Bye. Say bye, everyone.
Bye, with some horns in the background. Thank you, Petrol.
To send us an email, see pictures, get song lyrics, join our Facebook fan site, follow us on Twitter, or to find out about sponsorship opportunities, go to GarethJones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!